This image showing medical workers cheering for the protesters is the ultimate insult added atop the serious injuries that small business owners have undergone in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic and now widespread rioting across this country. From Katie Tur, healthcare workers come out to cheer on and take a knee in support of protesters. The same people NYC has been honoring every night at 7 p.m., now returning the support. The reason this image is the ultimate insult is because it was only April 20th that we saw, standing in defiance of those who wanted their businesses reopened, nurses. The story from Al Jazeera, for instance, U.S. medical workers stand up to anti-lockdown protesters. Most Americans say they are concerned that the coronavirus stay-at-home orders will be lifted too soon. This whole situation has left me very confused as to what happened to the coronavirus. It's gone overnight. And it's not just me saying that. A medical expert in Italy saying it is gone. It clinically does not exist. I'm very confused as to why, when some people came out to protest in support of their businesses, they were attacked and insulted. And now we can see this amazing photo of healthcare workers still wearing their masks because, I remind you, we are in a pandemic. At least that's what Bill de Blasio says. But for some reason, this is justified. And we can see why throughout all of these stories that are popping up showing the double standards. How about this story from NPR? Protesting racism versus risking COVID-19. I wouldn't weigh these crises separately. Medical workers coming out in support of protests simply because they oppose racism. So you, as an American, who did everything right, who shuttered your business and said, I will do what I have to do to make sure my community succeeds, you are being punished. Yet the people who would come out and protest for their ideological cause, be it justified or not, that's not the point, they're praised. Meanwhile, as these protests are undertaken, looters destroyed what was left of the rest of our businesses. To me, this is nothing more than the greatest, or I should say a very grand betrayal, mostly by Democratic leaders, particularly New York, as many of these riots, a lot of the looting and these protests are taking place in Democratic cities. But the reason why I say it's the ultimate betrayal is not just about the fact that they told you to lock down, you still can't reopen your business, and then they said the protests were okay. It's also about the fact that even according to the polls that they beat us over the head with, most Americans say they are concerned that the coronavirus stay-at-home orders will be lifted too soon. You mean to tell me that not only did they tell us not to go out, but to the people who said, please don't reopen, they said no. For the protesters, we will. And the media is to blame as well. All of the stories that emerged saying that these protesters who wanted their businesses reopened just wanted haircuts and that they were monsters who were callous and didn't care about their fellow man. Now, what do we see? Across the country, thousands engaging in protests, rioting, and looting. And what does Bill de Blasio have to say about it? Completely walking back his previous comments about no protests being allowed. I want to walk you through this story from the New York Post. If protesters can march, why can't businesses open? And I want to show you this story from NBC. Global experts go head to head over claims the coronavirus no longer exists clinically. How amazingly convenient. The moment that these protesters come out, the experts say COVID doesn't exist anymore. In fact, one of these major studies having to do with wearing masks has been retracted. It's so strange, isn't it? The Democratic politicians who kept these lockdowns going, even though we knew when Andrew Cuomo, governor of New York, said most infections were taking place in the home, he refused to release the lockdown. It was only after people decided to go out and protest did they say, okay, for this, we will allow it. You see, these politicians, they pander only to the basest of human emotions. They know that regular law-abiding Americans are going to stay home and do what they have to do, and they're not going to cause a fuss. But they know those that are outraged and engaging in violence, rioting, and looting, they know that nothing will stop them short of desperate begging and capitulance. And that's what they've got. They've offered up as much as they can, as quickly as they can, and it's not stopping anything. The demands continue to escalate. Even as the family of George Floyd says, please stop, they don't care. The rioters continue. So let's get started with this story, taking a look at why businesses still can't reopen. Why it is that Phil Murphy of New Jersey insulted the regular people of this state. I live in New Jersey, mind you, calling them knuckleheads for not social distancing. But all of these protests, here, following this statement. May 2nd, attention knuckleheads, keep a safe distance, flatten the curve. Complete and utter hypocrisy. Because now we can get those nurses to stand up and cheer for you. No longer protesting. Let's read the story from the New York Post about businesses and how they feel. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There's several ways you can give. I have a P.O. box here, but the best thing you can do is just share this video. I see a lot of people talking about how anybody who's focused more on the rioting is missing the bigger picture, and you're part of the problem. I don't believe that's fair at all. Many people have lost their lives in these riots. Businesses that were already destroyed are now ransacked and may never reopen. It's insult to injury. The injury of the pandemic, the injury of the looting, and then the slap in the face for every insult they threw your way. Well, the mainstream media and the large press companies that I compete with get a front page boost, a front row position on YouTube.com. If you want to help out channels like mine, please consider sharing this video because I don't have the powerful marketing budgets of, say, CNN, Fox News, or MSNBC. Now, if you just want to watch, click the subscribe button, the like button, and the notification bell. Let's read the story from the New York Post. If protesters can march, why can't businesses open? Remember COVID-19? Owners of small businesses that have yet to open but are in danger of being smashed by rioters sure do. As Mayor Bill de Blasio and Governor Andrew Cuomo take turns making vague comments about the continued destruction, many small business owners caught in limbo are asking, why are crowds okay for protests but not anything else? Our fearful leaders have no answer. Other than to pander, I suppose, in a desperate bid to get votes, I guess, or to quell those who would use violence against you. No, you can't go to a baseball game. No, you can't watch basketball. And no, you can't go to the pub to hang out with your buddies. But I'll tell you what, Bill de Blasio will defend you in 2 seconds, Mayor of New York, by the way, if you're out protesting. He said it several times. In fact, shockingly, this is wow. Bill de Blasio is still enforcing the shutdown of Jewish prayer services while praising the widespread protests in his city. It is truly, truly remarkable, a sight to behold. New York City is still a full 5 days away from entering phase 1. This will open up only some industries like construction and manufacturing and retail on a pickup basis only. Many business owners are wondering if they'll have a business left to open when their turn finally comes. Few business owners I spoke to would let me use their name or the name of their business. Several told me they're afraid of retaliation by a government that has full control of their fate. They feel that criticizing any part of the reopen plan can have them targeted for shutdown when they do not open. An owner of a chain of preschools that regularly provide services to over 500 families across the city told me how impossible it's been to get a clear answer from the state about the future of his business. Remarkably, many of these businesses can be opened while maintaining social distancing. So please explain to me how it is that a shop that could sell you a cheeseburger one at a time can't reopen, but the protests are a good thing. There is no answer other than to the good people of New York City who have seen your businesses shuttered and hurt. You have been betrayed. They don't care about you. They care only to pander to those who threaten their re-election. We have waited weeks, is a quote. We have waited weeks to hear from the state and local officials, and no one can provide clear guidance. We've had teams that have been put in a place to assess the situation from day one. And the fact that there is little to no solid information presented to small businesses so we may begin to transform to a new norm is disheartening. What new norm? There's no new norm. COVID is gone. Take a look at this story from CNBC. I want to move on because I want to tell you the point of all of this. Perhaps they were wrong about everything. Dr. Anthony Fauci once told us not to wear masks. The studies said the masks didn't do anything. Then the CDC retracted those guidelines. And now in the past few days, the main study suggesting masks don't work has been completely retracted. Factcheck.org says, well, those are outdated comments from Anthony Fauci. How can we trust anything they say at this point when they all told us what we had to do and we can see what they're doing now? How many people are just trying to get by and feed their families and had to arrive at their business to find the windows removed and their products gone? Too many. And how many of those same people turned and saw Joe Biden, his own staff, providing bail to the people who were caught doing these things? Truly remarkable. CNBC reports a very public dispute has broken out between some of Italy's and the world's most high-profile doctors after one expert claimed the coronavirus no longer exists clinically. We were wondering why it was that every single story following the right-wing protests to reopen business, every story said that there was a spike in cases or they insulted the protesters. The photos of the nurses blocking the cars went viral. Yet after the George Floyd protests erupted, we didn't see these same stories. I mean, a little bit for the most part, but actually a story from New York says that the numbers are going down. So what was it? Did they lie? Were they wrong? Was it never really as bad as they claimed? Was it false framing? I think the answer is quite simple, my friends. The media lied to you. That's why they propped up the photo of the nurse in front of the truck. And that's why they are propping up the nurses cheering for the protesters now. The good guys are always on your side, no matter what is right or wrong. It's about your tribe, not about your life. They will support these protests. They will say the protests are peaceful. Chris Cuomo of CNN going on TV and says, who says protests need to be peaceful? Now, of course, we condemn the violence, but they don't need to be peaceful. You know, violent is an antonym of peaceful. What are you trying to say with this? Now it's gone? It no longer exists? Who is this guy? Dr. Alberto Zengrio, the head of intensive care at the San Rafael Hospital in Milan, in Lombardy. The epicenter of Italy's coronavirus outbreak, caused a stir on Sunday by telling Italian media that a study by his colleagues had shown the virus was losing its potency. Zengrillo, who is well known for being the personal doctor of Italy's former prime minister, Silvio Berlusconi, said the study showed the virus was weakening and that in reality, from the clinical point of view, the virus no longer exists. Good news, everyone. I suppose that means your businesses can all reopen instantly. What's that? They can't. Why can't they? There's no answer, is there? In New Jersey, the governor has threatened a small business, a gym, simply for opening up to a small handful of people. This building, this gym, is connected to a Dollar General store that sees hundreds of people coming in at any given moment. And you can stand there and watch. And it's so shockingly confusing when the police come and issue citations and even arrested one guy for refusing to provide ID. Why was all of this happening? I don't know. Apparently now the viral load is gone. Quote, the swabs were performed over the last 10 days showed a viral load in quantitative terms that was absolutely infinitesimal compared to the ones carried out on patients a month or two ago. How absurdly convenient for all of these protesters and all of these Democrats who ignored all of this. But certainly now with this data, we can start doing testing to figure out it's not that bad anymore, right? Apparently not. Apparently you're still not allowed to open your business. But the protests have been going on now for almost a week. The riots have been getting worse. There's a video going viral of people hijacking a forklift industrial equipment and crashing into the front of some kind of retail shop. I believe it was a Best Buy. I couldn't see the sign. And this, and of course, to be fair, everyone condemns the rioting within reason. Some people condemn the violence and the rioting, but you absolutely do see activists praising it. It's called restorative justice, they say. Well, either we have defeated COVID or everyone is going to die. So whatever, I guess. That's a tweet from me. Here you can see in this video thousands of people protesting in France. That's so strange to me. What is this? All of a sudden, they're happy about it. Look, I don't care. Maybe the COVID's still there. Maybe it'll come back. Maybe in a couple of weeks, people will get really sick and will realize just how bad it was to allow these. But why are they allowing these? Why did they insult the people of New Jersey and New York? I mean, Phil Murphy calling them knuckleheads and now praising all of this? What do you expect? Here's the video of the crane or whatever it is that I mentioned crashing into the front of a building. That's what's happening right now. Your businesses are quite literally being destroyed, and they're being destroyed with industrial equipment. Why? So that these people can pray or whatever it is they're doing here in this clip. I posted this on Instagram. I'm not joining your cult. I'm not interested. It's a group of people sitting in a massive crowd of what looks like thousands of people holding their hands up, chanting about social justice causes. Sorry, I'm not interested in this. But this is what's allowed, the ideological gathering of some kind of prayer service. Yet people who wanted to go to church were fined for sitting in their cars. I'm sorry. In these places, you have been betrayed. Heaven forbid you pull up to a church in your vehicle to receive church services. They went car to car issuing tickets. They threatened certain churches and shut them down over restrictions. This is okay, they say. That's exactly what they think. They think it's okay. And you can see it in your mainstream media when CNN comes out in defense of them. The same media companies that criticized every business owner scared, losing their jobs, every person who lost their jobs, now they're just saying it's A-okay. Do your thing, they say. Chris Cuomo's viewership plunged by half since contracting coronavirus. And this is why he does it. The Democrats are doing it for re-election. The media is doing it for ratings. Bill de Blasio straight up said, no protests allowed in New York City on May 6th. What do you think he's saying today? Do you think he's coming out and saying, I absolutely condemn all protests, no matter what they're doing? Look at this story from Fox News. Quote, you're talking about some of the values we hold in the highest regard in this country, and certainly in this city. The right for people to gather, the right for free speech, and the right to protest, Shea said during a Monday press briefing. This is the commissioner. But now comes the bad news. We're in a pandemic, and executive orders have been issued. These are laws that have been passed down through executive order to keep people alive. While we greatly respect the right of people to protest, there should not be protests taking place in the middle of a pandemic by gathering outside and putting people's lives at risk. I'm putting people at risk, he says. The announcement came a day after the Reclaim Pride LGBT advocacy group protested Mount Sinai Hospital's relationship to the Samaritan Purse Christian organization, which set up a field hospital in Central Park for COVID-19 patients in an effort to reduce Mount Sinai's load. Now, that's a fair point, okay? This comment was made following left-wing social justice type protests. But what about everything they said about the business owners? What about every business being shuttered? And what about the data suggesting you don't need to lock down anymore? It's all ignored. It's all completely ignored in favor of what scares them. When asked, Hamodia reporter asks why protest is allowed when prayer services aren't. Well, I just showed you a prayer service. I don't know where that was from. I don't believe it was from New York. Kind of weird and creepy if you were to ask me, and I want nothing to do with that weird cult ideology. But when asked of de Blasio, he said, 400 years of American racism. I'm sorry. That is not the same question as the understandably aggrieved store owner or the devout religious person who wants to get back to services. Cars are seen patrolling Jewish neighborhoods in Brooklyn, telling them they're not allowed to pray or have services. Yet at the same time, Bill de Blasio hops to Twitter to defend his daughter. And there it is, isn't it? It's all about personal gain and nepotism. My daughter has a deep respect for humanity, for peaceful protest, and a desire to change our world for the better. I love her, respect her, and I admire her. That's a bold difference from the people who are just called knuckleheads, the people who are insulted for saying they wanted to kill grandma. Oh, but Bill de Blasio's daughter got arrested, and the police are furious about it. But Bill de Blasio supports the protests, and that's probably why. He said, this is just on the 29th. To everyone protesting and expressing that anger and pain, please remember how important it is to protest peacefully. Please remember that we're in the middle of a pandemic. We have to do all we can to protect each other. Everyone out there has a responsibility. Was that it? That was your strong statement after your commissioner came out and said no protests allowed? He just said, we'll do it peacefully. The shocking thing to me is how we were all told the world was ending. Then the studies came out. More people had been infected by COVID than we had previously known, and the mortality rate was dramatically lower than we expected. Funny, because I reported all of this and opined on all of it as though it was all true. And now the data is coming out and it's all being retracted. I don't know what to believe is true. What I can say is that the insults are obvious and the double standards are clear. The American people aren't stupid enough to fall for this trick. You got a lot of stupid people that blindly go out and march and ignore everything. But you got a lot of American business owners that can see right through the double standard. These protests are obvious. We saw it with Brett Kavanaugh and we saw it with Joe Biden, the double standard in the press. And now we can see it in business with the protests, with the nurses being propped up and praised for cheering for those who would break social distancing. The Reagan Battalion says NYC is burning. And guess where Bill de Blasio has his cops? In Williamsburg, Brooklyn, warning Orthodox Jews that they will be arrested for attending evening prayers. No rioting, not looting, not beating, just praying. That's what you can get. I think it's because, like I said in the beginning, they pander to the base emotion of the crowd. It's unfortunate, but the reality is when you see overt threats and violence, politicians do listen. That's the scary reality, isn't it? Every business owner who peacefully came out and protest, perhaps you've learned a very important lesson, isn't it? Or haven't you? But what's the solution? I don't know. Because the reality is, I don't think violence is the answer, because all they've really done is proven that more people should be violent. And that's what's scary. They shouldn't be giving into this. Otherwise, you'll get more of it. And this is what I'm scared of moving forward as we enter the future. What you can expect. This man, this cop in Minneapolis, was handed over to Keith Ellison, someone who had posed with the Antifa handbook, someone whose son is avowed Antifa, went on Twitter and said, I believe it's his son. But think about what that means. They handed over this guy to the ideological opponent. Now, everybody thinks this guy deserves justice, George Floyd, and this guy should face justice, I should say, to clarify. We all want to see it. He's charged with third-degree murder. But my concern is what happens next. And my fear is that we head towards a reality where instead of cancel culture, we end up with mob culture. And then you'll end up with the police saying something like, well, this person who said naughty words on the internet didn't break any laws. But the mob is getting unruly and dangerous. Can we just give them what they want? That's the path we're headed towards. The more they give in to the mob, the more they will give in to the mob, because no amount of capitulation will stop anything. They'll just keep coming back for more. It's why the United States doesn't negotiate with kidnappers overseas. If you're in a country and you get kidnapped, the U.S. government says, nope. They're going to send in an armed squad to liberate the individuals taken, to put it mildly. Some countries give in and they pay the ransom. And so they become high priority targets. These are the people to go after. What do you think happens when the mob learns it works? They're actually going out and saying it already. They're saying the rioting works. How many people have died so far? A lot, more than a dozen. But the rioting works, I guess. Just all that means is that to get what you want, you got to walk over bodies. I'm not a fan of that at all. I don't want it to happen. But here we can see exactly what's going on. Feckless, ineffectual, pathetic leadership. And it's coming from these Democratic districts, these Democratic cities and governors and governments. Cuomo finally stepped up, said he would displace Bill de Blasio if he didn't bring in the National Guard and get things under control. Now he's apologizing, criticizing Trump. Let me tell you all something. You may have seen my segment yesterday. There is a poll from the Morning Consult showing 58% of Americans want Trump to use the military to end these riots. 71% want the National Guard. I don't know who these politicians are speaking to. I don't know who the media is trying to pander to. But we can see the double standard, and we can see the lies. And you can see how conservatives are getting smeared and labeled on Twitter every single day. I find it laughable. They claim there's no bias against conservatives on social media. They labeled something from Matt Gaetz as glorifying violence, but you literally had leftists giving instructions on how to commit acts of violence. That's different, I guess. Trump gets labeled, Matt Gaetz, who else? That's where it is. We can see the double standard. If the nurses come out and insult and deride conservatives, that's fine, right? If the nurses come out and they praise the protest, that's fine. What happened to being all in this together? We're not. You're not. I'll tell you who they're in this for, the violent mob. Because if you're a peaceful citizen who wants to run your business, you can rest assured they will do nothing for you because they're not in this with you. They don't care what you think. They don't listen to the language of, negotiation, peace. They listen to, please don't hurt me. That's the language they speak. And that means it's only going to get worse. I feel bad for all of you with your businesses, man. I really, really do, because I'm fortunate enough to work from home and work in a business that yeah, is deemed, it's deemed essential. It's crazy, right? And I don't have to worry about it. The other day, I wasn't able to go to the store because of the curfew. And this is the COVID curfew. And I thought to myself, man, I totally forgot about that. Are we still locked down? Yeah, we are. Seems hard to believe, doesn't it? Because the nurses are getting out in groups, not social distancing, and clapping for the protests that are breaking all the rules. But those guys with that gym who are just trying to do some push-ups, shut them down. These are your leaders. I hope you enjoy the ones you voted for. The next segment will be coming up at 6 p.m. at youtube.com/TimCastNews. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.